Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. Get my loose snowball a little closer. Um, I haven't done a video for a while, and the other day I printed on my blog. I put up some pictures of a meal that I cooked, and Berta in Madrid, ¿Qué tal, Berta? She said that she misses my videos. So it doesn't take much encouragement if there are people out there who enjoyed watching. I'm quite happy to get on here and rant. So I was just looking at some of the subjects that have come up recently on my blog. One of the ones I'll mention is this whole issue of critical thinking versus sort of the emotional connection that we might have with a language. And I've mentioned on my blog some of the exchanges that I've had with some teachers who are on a listserv, which is sort of a community of people who send emails to this broad distribution of people who are following and talk about things that relate to language learning. And the subject always comes up of how there's this sort of scope creep where the teachers don't want to just teach the language or help people learn the language. They want to teach them about democracy, or they want to teach them about their rights and about social inequality, or they want to teach them to analyze better, and they feel that they're in a position to do this, that somehow that an English teacher is better at critical thinking than someone from a different culture who just doesn't happen to speak English. And so that was one series, and I'll get back to that subject. And then there was this idea that appeared in an article that I posted, some work done I think in Israel, which demonstrated that how we feel about a language or about the people has a major impact on our ability to pronounce accurately, on our ability to reduce our accent, so to speak. And I think this is very interesting because obviously how well we do in learning a language is very much influenced by how we feel. Our level of motivation, our level of interest, and even beyond that, our level of empathy with the language. And as one of the people who commented on my blog said, our desire or willingness to see ourselves as part of that group. And I have always felt that to be very significant. When I learn Chinese, I see myself as Chinese. I have no trouble seeing myself as one of them. They may not want me, or Koreans or Russians or whoever, but I don't care. If I listen to Echa Moskvi and I hear all these people, I'd love to go there and meet them and go out for dinner and talk Russian. They may not want anything to do with me, but that's a different story. In my mind, I can see myself as part of their group. Whether they would accept me as part of their group, in a way, doesn't matter. And I might face rejection. That might discourage me a little bit, but in a way it doesn't. I just want to be part of their group, whether they want me or not. And that kind of sort of emotional commitment is very important. On the other hand, the idea that the language teacher has to be the teacher of a new way of thinking, of a different culture, has to introduce the culture to you. I have always resisted that. If I was, when I went to Japan, actually I had, for 1 month, I went to, for an hour, I think twice a week, a Japanese class, just underneath Tokyo Tower. And the teacher there wanted to tell me about Japanese festivals, and I can still remember his kokoro to kokoro, and all kinds of stuff like that about the Japanese and how they are. It was meaningless to me. I didn't want him to impose that on me. I wanted to discover it on my own, through the Japanese people that I met, through the reading that I did. I didn't want to have it imposed on me. And so, and maybe I'm different or strange in that regard, but I always feel that any feelings that we have that are natural, any desires that are genuine, are going to be much more powerful motivators in learning than something that is taught at us, instructed to us. So I picture these teachers teaching, and they don't only call it critical thinking, they call it higher order thinking. Like they are going to teach higher order thinking. That suggests that they are already practitioners of higher order thinking, and that their students only practice lower order thinking. I mean, we all practice thinking, critical thinking. I mean, this thing costs $10 and this costs $5. So if this one isn't twice as good as that, I won't buy it. I'll buy the cheaper one. I mean, we're doing that all the time. But the people on this listserv are very, very insistent. They all, without exception. And the other thing that's funny on this listserv is, because everything that happens in the public domain, insofar as language or any kind of education is concerned, it's fundamentally driven by how do we get more funding. And once funding stops, the activity stops. And this particular listserv is funded. And one of the things they fund is a person to monitor every post. So that every so often I get one of my posts, because I send an email there, I get it rejected. Some while ago, one of my posts was rejected because I had the words in there, you know, sometimes it's useful to consider both sides of an argument. I think I said something like that. She said, please remove that. Now here again, someone on this listserv came along and said that the American occupation of Japan after the war is largely responsible for the Japanese approach to teamwork and consensus building. So I went back and I said that I did not think that a few years of American occupation could have any such influence on Japanese culture. That was just not so. So then we had a back and forth, and someone else chimed in, and he had a bunch of information about how Japan continues to operate on a top-down military-style, management, and that the honcho is the man in charge, and everybody's afraid to challenge the honcho. And so I went back and said, well, no, actually, there is no such position as a honcho. There's a kacho, there's a bucho. There's no honcho. And besides which, in Japan, the ideal is consensus. I think there's more military order-giving type management in the US or Canada than there is in Japan, in my experience, and I lived there for 9 years. But you also can have very dictatorial management styles in different companies, in different situations, but by and large, the effort is to arrive at some kind of consensus. But the Japanese, there is dissension, there is insubordination, and I used as an example the situation leading up to the Second World War, where the sort of dissent and the insubordination by a certain group of hot-headed officers is largely responsible for this sort of increasingly aggressive posture and aggressiveness and aggressive action by the Japanese military prior to the war. And so I get a note back from the person monitoring this forum, would you please remove your reference to hot-headed officers, because some of the members of our group may have connections with hot-headed officers and may find that offensive. I kid you not. That's what she said. So, I mean, I've long since stopped. I don't argue with them. I just, but okay, no hot-headed officers, just mid-level officers, whatever. But that's just unbelievable. You know, critical thinking, but you can't describe something that is true, that is historical fact, that probably is irrelevant to most people on the forum. Anyway, I leave the subject. So, I guess what I want to get at here again is, I don't want to belabor the point, that you know, the key thing for a teacher is to engage the emotions of the learner. And that is best done by somehow trying to stimulate them. So if some discussion, critical discussion of, I think one of them said that they want their learners to learn to be able to maturely discuss ethical questions. Well, if the learner is interested in discussing ethical questions, fine. But if they want to talk about cooking, gossip, travel, whatever, let them talk about what they want. And let them find the things in your culture that they find attractive. Don't try to persuade them what they should find attractive. Because the main thing in teaching a language is to turn on the switch. And that's what teachers should be thinking about all the time. How do I turn on each person's switch? Now, easier said than done if you've got a room full of apathetic teenagers, but I'm about to run out of time. Bye for now.